Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Beat Your Addiction with John Giordano. I'm your co-host, Scott Jones, and I want to thank everybody for joining us here today. And whether you're watching this on Facebook or on YouTube or wherever, just make sure that you take a moment, you like the show, you share it with somebody, and you subscribe to the channel. That way we can keep these good works going on, trying to spread the word about addiction recovery, more importantly, and just about living a good, healthy life. John, how are you, my friend?
Well, today I'm doing terrific. I woke up. I'm ahead of the game already.
Because you woke up?
That's right. Some people don't wake up.
It's funny. The older you get, the lower the bar is set for a good day, right?
Oh, absolutely. Listen, at 76 years old, let me tell you something. I'm very fortunate.
Absolutely. You know, and we've been dancing around. I've been busy. You've been busy. A lot's been going on, but we're back with the show. So we're glad everybody's joining us, and hope everybody is going into this summer and happy and healthy, right?
Hopefully.
We hope so. And if you're not, just a reminder, if you or somebody you care about is struggling with mental health issues or addiction issues or anything, reach out for help. Don't wait. Tomorrow's too late. We know a lot of people who said, I'll do it tomorrow, and they never made it to tomorrow.
Yeah, my Nana doesn't work. Anyway, listen to these podcasts because we're really teaching people, sharing information that's relevant to recovery. So you may hear something that might help change your life.
And we have an awesome guest today, John.
Absolutely.
Awesome guest. And it's my fault for not muting my phone. I do apologize. All right. Is your phone muted?
Yes, it is.
See, John's ahead of me already. He's the old pro now. Our guest, Marsha Vanwynsberghe, is coming to us all the way from up in Ontario, Canada. And Marsha, how are you?
I am great. How are you?
I'm doing just fine. Thank you. Boy, there's so much to talk about with you. Let me just give you the quick rundown of what I understand. Okay. You're a business coach. You're a speaker. You're an author. You're a podcaster with your podcast, Own Your Choices, Own Your Life. You've got books out, When She Stopped Asking Why and Owning Your Choices. And these books, I looked them up. They are available on Amazon. You can stop in and get them right there. Or, of course, you can go to your website and get them as well. You're interested in sharing your experience with how addiction affected your family, and you're really big into helping women share their stories and publish their stories too. Did I miss anything?
I don't think so. I think that's just it's I appreciate all of the words. For me, it's following my own journey through a difficult story that led me into the purpose and mission that I get to live today. I would have never thought it would become a business. I was just trying to navigate my own way through a story. So it's beautiful. Thank you for all of that.
Well, thank you for what you do. And I'm sure John's going to thank you as well when you guys start talking. It's good to see people taking those difficult moments in their life and not letting them beat you down, but to use them as a strength, not only for yourself, but for others. And that way others learn and everything. And your website is on there. It's marshavanw.com. Very simple. That way nobody has to figure out how to spell Vanwynsberghe.
Exactly. Once you start typing Google, Marsha Van, it just pops up. Everything is me. So it's like, yeah, just go with that. Make it easy.
Perfect. I want people to learn more about you. And between you and John, this interesting life thing, you guys are going to have a lot to talk about. So John, take it away, brother.
Where should I take it?
Take it anywhere you want to take it.
Tell us about how you got started, why you got started. How long have you been doing this for, Marsha?
I have been in this part of the business probably 3 years full time now. And I've been navigating through this since probably, I think my very first published chapter was in 2016.
Cool. Well, you're doing God's work, helping God's kids. And the bottom line, men need to learn to be vulnerable. You see, I'm a grandmaster in the martial arts. I learned a long time ago that vulnerability is the way to become successful.
It is.
People don't understand that. They think men have to be, don't show your emotions. I cry at movies. I mean,
I love it.
Why not?
Yeah, I love
I
it.
know who I am. It's people that are insecure that don't know who they are. They want to put on a certain image. You ever see those
Mhm.
commercials where the woman's wearing a mask and then, and she's really depressed and she takes the mask off, that kind of thing. I,
100%.
I don't need a mask anymore. I had that mask a long time ago, and I'm
Mhm.
coming up on 38 years recovery now. And
Amazing.
I know that mask. I don't want that mask. What you see is what you get, and that's how people respect you, and this is where you got to go. But when
Mhm.
you tell us about what you actually do and how you help people, and
Perfect. Thank you so much for having me. You were on my episode probably a few months ago, had an episode. It was a fantastic conversation. And so, how did I start here? What I do now is I really do help women and men. I've had a number of men come into my circle lately, which is great. In learning, they either want to learn how to be vulnerable and share their voice and message from the stage on a podcast, on a live, how to connect with people, like how to do vulnerability. What does it look like? And then as well, helping people to learn how to like own, speak, and share their stories. Because when we do that, whether it's in podcast form or in books, that's the piece of vulnerability that allows us to connect with others. And the more we start to find the way to share our stories, the more connections we end up making. Like we just can connect with people who have walked our journeys. And it's almost ironic because before we start to share, we feel like we're the only people in the world that are suffering. We'll feel like we're the only people because nobody likes to talk about shame stories. I'll call them shame stories. And the only way we're going to change that narrative is to start talking and to start talking about them and learning how to share them and speak from that space. So I came into this field by my own accord. And when I was dealing with my kids and teen substance abuse, and it started, and it just was it was a monster that came in and it never left, is the only way to say it. And for many years, it affected us, our lives, the four of us, and then as well as, school, family, relationships. And this is the thing addiction is a family disease. It's not a one person. It
absolutely.
impacts everyone. And as a mom, I'll always be straight up and share my journey is I spent years trying to fix everything, fix it, manage, control it, do anything I could to change it until I almost lost myself and then almost lost them and went, this is not working. This way is not working. I have to look at it a different way. And through a lot of counseling, a lot of support, and a lot of personal work, it became how can I own my choice and not take responsibility for others' decisions? And I would love to say I had a grand mission of a business, but I didn't. I was just trying to figure out how to survive. And then over time, I saw more and more people come into my circle saying, but how do you share a difficult story? I don't understand how to do it. I don't want to come across as angry and I don't want to come across as a victim. And I feel like I could do something with my story. And just the lights went on. And it was like, oh, this is actually going to be what we're doing now. And it felt so good to open up that door for others.
It's interesting because when I wrote my book about my life story
Mhm,
and the kid from the South Bronx who never gave up,
mhm,
it was very painful because I was molested when I was a kid.
mhm,
I got very confused about that. My father was a heroin dealer.
mhm.
He went to jail when I was 8, and I got molested at 8.5. They got molested again at 9 by a girl. Um, you know, uh, I had kind of like an eating disorder in a way when I was 12. I didn't want to eat because everybody used to call me Fat John.
Mhm.
I had all these things that I went through and all the stuff that went on in my life and the way my family was and how my uncle threw my wedding and then he wind up the caterer insulted him. He killed him the next morning. I
Yeah,
mean, I
just
mean, crazy stuff, and I
yeah.
share about all that stuff. And like you say, when you become vulnerable and you connect people and they go, wow, you've been through it. When I deal with addicts and they go, well, you don't understand my family. Man, if you had my family, I said, tell you what, man, I'll give you my family for a little while. Let me know how you do. They
Yeah.
were bank robbers. My father was a heroin dealer. My uncle was a hitman. So who would you like to have a choice?
But so many people don't see it from someone else's. Like when you're battling something, again, you feel like you are the only one. No one else gets me. Like no one else understands. And it's when you start to open that up and have the conversations, you recognize there's a world of people who are struggling with different things. So it just puts it back in perspective.
Well, what's interesting when you start to share about things like this, all of a sudden, people that never said anything about anything, I've experienced that. And I was never able to talk about that until I heard what you did or heard what you said. And that's probably what's happening with you too.
It 100% is. When I first started, I started on a very small stage. When I decided that I wanted to share, I had many family members say, "You're absolutely crazy. Like you cannot do this. We don't talk about difficult things." And my whole motto was, I felt in my gut I was supposed to. No logical reason why to explain it, but I felt like I was supposed to. And I really, truly felt that the reason we were in this position that nobody would talk about difficult things is why we were in this position, because we've made it such a big thing to share that we're struggling. And the very first talk that I did, I was so scared. I had everything like memorized and very, like, it was not from the heart, but it was just because I was afraid of sharing, but I knew I had to. And I think I had 3 women come up to me and say, that was my story and I've never shared it with a soul. And I'm like, you've gone your whole life and you struggled with like a family member, an addiction, and you never shared it with a soul. No. And that all of a sudden was an eye opener for me that I'm like, there's probably like 40 people in the room and 3 of them came up, which meant there was probably others who didn't have the courage to come up. And that started to become a fuel that I'm not alone. I'm not alone. I could do something with this. And to this day, I have never given a talk without at least a handful of people coming up to me and saying, it's my story. I've never told anyone. So I feel this pull that I want to normalize these kinds of stories. And it's not just addiction. I mean, I have a lot of clients who have dealt with assault, molestation, family members, really difficult stories. And they all fall under the umbrella of shame, because that's what we call them. And shame is a pretty sneaky thing of keeping us very much stuck in our stories and keeping us quiet. So I would like to continue to bring a voice to all of those conversations.
Well, you talk about when people don't realize when you have shame and guilt and all of that way, you're supposed to be a certain way in life and society.
Mhm.
That energy that you keep down causes you to have depression and anxiety.
100%. Yes.
Now my son almost died from this disease. I watched him and I was in recovery at the time. I watched him put charcoal down his throat to absorb the drugs he took. And I was crying and blaming myself. And then I stopped because, I had a lot of education. And says, you know what? He made the choice, and I
That's
think,
a
well,
turning
because I
point.
was an addict and that's what, no, he made the choice. Just
That's
like
a
I
turning
made the
point.
choice.
Yeah, that's a very much a turning point for anyone who is listening. I would say when you come to the space of recognizing that that's actually not my choice, that it was their choice. But what is my choice? And this is the piece that I had to really flip and switch, because in my brain, I felt like I'd failed. That's a mom's job. You should fix things. And I was in this space of not owning what my own choices were, because I was literally angry at everyone. I was angry at the world. It was the world's fault that my life was where it was. And when I come to the point of owning what your choice is, I had to come to the space of saying, okay, it's not the world's fault I'm not taking care of myself. It's not the world's fault that my mindset is crap. It's mine. I need to own that. And learning how to do that and not fall into like more shame, more judgment, more blame is when change happens, because all of us know we could be doing something different in our lives. We all know that. But what happens is the second we recognize that we're not owning that choice, a lot of times we fall right into that shame, judgment, blame, guilt, anger, and none of those emotions are going to change anything. They change nothing. So that was a real change and shift for me.
Well, you know what it is this people don't realize is that they keep replaying their history.
Yep.
And you see, and that's what people don't get. And then they live in the future with
Yes.
all their worries and all their thoughts, and then they lose the present.
Yes.
But you see, people say, well, it's easier to say this and it's easier to do this. No, it's not easy. But let's look at the alternative. Okay.
Right.
Which
Right.
is easier?
Yes.
And see, and what happens is a lot of people, like, for instance, my son got arrested for, they were robbing houses. He was the lookout. So he calls me from jail. And he goes, "Dad, I'm in jail. You got to get me out." I said, "No, I don't have to get you out. I want you to sit there and think about how you got there, why you got there, and what's happening to you. How
Mhm.
could you do that? I hate you," and all that stuff. So normally I would say, "Oh my God, he hates me. Oh, he's going to never love me again." Baloney.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we went to court, and the judge knew me, and he says, "John, and I'll reprimand him into your custody." He says, "Your Honor, can I speak?" He said, "Sure." He's an addict. He needs to be in treatment, and I would appreciate if you mandate him, put him on house arrest, and I can get him into treatment. He
Mhm.
says, "You got it." My son
Wow.
hated me, but the moral of the story is he's got 18 years today. Okay.
Wow.
If I had to design a kid, I would have felt short. He's got integrity. He has values. He cares about himself. He cares
Yeah.
about other people. He's a
Yeah.
father today. The bottom line is this: kids don't come out with a manual. At least mine didn't. I was looking for one, but I didn't have one. So was my wife at the time. You know, so
Yeah,
I,
I've actually said the manual thing. I think I actually wrote it in my book, but it's like they don't come with a manual. And even if they did, I guarantee you there was no manual for what we were living in. There's no manual that
and
would have done
they
that.
learn more from the outside than they learn from the inside.
Mhm.
And we could teach them the best of everything, but you know who they listen to? The kids out there.
Mhm.
And
Until
hopefully, what I learned is if you say, like my son says, "Dad, if it wasn't for you, I'd probably be dead or in jail or on
wow.
drugs still." He says, "You set an example for me." And
Yeah.
that's the best way to teach somebody. Not
Mhm.
do as I say, not as I do.
No,
You know, if you set
completely
the
agree.
example, it's up to them to choose that example or choose the other one. We're
Mhm.
not responsible for that.
No, I've used the words, and I believe this not just for kids, but even our spouses and family. Like my job is not to push and pull anyone through life. My job is like I'll walk beside you, cheer you on, support you, but my job is not to walk and like push you and pull you through life. My job is to lead myself. And how I lead myself is really what everyone has to like. We all get to choose how we lead ourselves. And that's when we can create change because we also know like we know what's working, what's not working. We don't like to admit it, but we know when things are off with ourself, with our health, with our mental health, with our priorities, whatever it is. And it's that again, that owning that choice in that space and then making a different decision. The more we can take responsibility for ourselves and lead ourselves, regardless of the circumstances that are happening, the more likely we are to create change in our life.
Well, when I meet with parents with children, and I say to them, "You're trying to, well, we want to make him do this, and we want him to change and do that." I said, "Let me ask you a question. How hard is it to change you?
Mhm.
And now
Great
you want to
question.
change somebody else? And
Yeah.
how are you doing with your changes?
Yep.
I see you smoke cigarettes. How come you don't quit? You know it's going to kill you.
Yep. Yep.
Okay. What do you, what's the story?" So listen, you can't change anyone.
No,
Okay.
not
All
at
you
all.
can do is set an example, and that's it. If you
Mhm.
try to, oh, you got such good potential. Oh, you got this and you have that. And you could tell them all the stories. They're not listening to you because in their
Mhm.
mind, they don't know me and they don't understand me. And they have to find their own journey. You cannot push or force anybody to do anything. You can't even do it to yourself.
I know, and you've nailed it there because you can't do it to yourself. And I think the other piece is like, can we, this sounds very philosophical, but can we learn to love others unconditionally? Like I've said for the longest time, I said, like you get to choose and make your own choices in life. I love you either way. I'm not here to fix it. I'm not here to manage it, but I still love you no matter what. And so can we love people unconditionally? I had many people step into my space and say, like, oh, they're not doing this, they're not doing this. Like, you have to fix this, you have to do it, blah, blah, blah. It's like, can you love them unconditionally, whether they finish high school, whether they have a job you like, whether they're not meeting expectations. And if you're putting big expectations on somebody else, that's your issue. That's not theirs.
Well, you say unconditionally. When you tell people that, usually the reposer goes, and they go, what do you mean? How can I love them unconditionally? Look what they're doing. What I tell them is, you can love them, but you don't have to like what they're doing.
Right. Absolutely.
I mean,
Mhm.
so the bottom line is, since you cannot control it,
Mhm.
okay, you can't even control you and your responses. So you want to control them and their responses?
Yeah.
Forget it.
Yes.
It's not going to happen.
No, and I think that you nailed the word that comes up with most of our lives, and then as well in talking about addiction, is control. It's control. It's like this feeling of I don't have control makes so many of us uncomfortable. But it's not that we lost it. We actually never had it. We had the illusion we thought we had it, but it makes us uncomfortable because we don't have the control. And it's like the second you can learn to, like, okay, this is happening around me, I can control the outcome by how I choose to show up for myself. I can do everything right and still all these things can go wrong behind me. It's how do I choose to respond? That's the control piece. So I think the sooner we can open up and recognize and own the fact that we don't have control, but that we can choose to control how we show up, that's when we can create change in our own life, regardless of the chaos that's happening around us.
Well, let me tell you a real quick story with my son, okay?
Mhm.
And he was dealing drugs and he was doing all this stuff. And I found out and I told him, listen, and he was living with me. And I says, look, you can't do this. Oh,
Mhm.
here, either you stop doing what you're doing and go to treatment, or you have to leave. Now he was 15,
Mhm.
okay? So
Yes.
he decided to leave. So
Yep.
my whole family jumped on me. How could you do that? What's wrong with you? Yeah, this whole story. And
Mhm.
was it easy? Absolutely not. This
Mhm.
kid left for a month. The phone would ring. I thought it was either he's
Mhm.
dead, in jail, in the hospital.
Mhm.
It drove me crazy. But my therapist and everybody said, John, there's nothing you can do about this.
Mhm.
He came
We
back.
Go
He
ahead.
came back. Yeah, and he wound up getting in jail. That's how we got to jail.
Wow. It's
God,
at
God
15.
intervened.
Yeah, that's incredible. We had very similar, very similar stories. Both were out by the time they were 16. And it was like, you can do what you want, you just can't do it here. It just can't. I don't want to live this way. And we had many people, family, friends who were downright critical because they were like, you can't do that. You can't do that. That's a terrible thing to do. I just got to this space where I'm like, I'm sorry, are you offering to come and live in my house and walk in my shoes? Because if you're, I could really use some rest. I'll go somewhere else. Like, you're welcome to step in. Oh, you're not? Then I don't want your advice.
Well, what I tell people is this. I had a couple. They had a son, and their son, they says, well, he's doing better. I says, no, he's not. He's lying to you better. Okay. Well, we bought him an apartment. We got him a car. This way, he wanted this and he wanted that. And now that maybe he could see that he could do better in life, that he won't do the drugs. I says, you want to know something? The way I'm hearing the story from you and the way I hear it from him, he's going to die within the next month. And they go,
Mhm.
how dare you say that to me? I said, I've been doing this for over 30 years. I know what I'm talking about. I've
Yeah.
seen this 1,000 times. Now, maybe it won't happen. I said, but boy, he's on that road. Unfortunately, 2 weeks later, he OD'd and died.
Oh, that's terrible.
I was at the funeral. They both looked at me, hysterical, crying. Why didn't we listen to you? Because
Mhm.
what I told them in the session was, you're loving your son to death. You want to
Yes.
support him? Support him when he wants help. You want to
Yeah.
support him? Get him a therapist. You want to support him? Put him in treatment.
Mhm.
Do not enable him. Do not allow him to do these things in your home, because then you're going to wake up one day, he's going to be dead in his room.
Mhm. You've nailed so many things there, and I think that's a really hard realization for a parent to come to, because I took a lot of defense to the word enabling and to thinking and codependent, thinking, no, there's no way I'm not. But when they're minors, I mean, it's different. It is different when you're talking about kids that are under 16 and you're dealing with this. They weren't adults. It is different. And so I think most of us try everything first. And then it's like, wait, I'm not. I remember a counselor saying, you're enabling. I'm like, I am not. And they're like, and when I started to look at it, I'm like, okay, I am. And so then it got to a space where they weren't here anymore. And I mean, I had weeks on end where I didn't know where they were. I had no idea. And it's horrible. It's a horrible experience for a
Oh,
parent.
it's a
I'm not even
nightmare.
it was, I like it, it really, it is a horrible experience. There's no sugarcoating that whatsoever. But what I would do, I had somebody actually just reach out to me in the last 2 weeks and said, I would go to my son's place where he's living, and it's an absolute dump, and I would clean it spotless because he can't live like that. And she said, "You've done that too, right?" I'm like, "Nope, there's no way I would do that. There's no way I'd do that." What I did do, I'm not judging that, I'm just sharing. What I did do is I would take food. I would take, if I did anything, it would be like, here is food. It was never cash. It was never money. It was never anything like that. It was like, here's food. And it was just like, I love you. And here you are. You know where I am when you're ready.
Well, you
And
see, here's the deal. I give you an example. I had a mother, okay, that was, I mean, talk about enabling. How about this? She wouldn't have him go out of the house. She would go into the hood and get him the heroin because she didn't want him to get arrested or have something happen to him. She
oh
would
my
bring the
gosh,
heroin back, give it to him, and she was telling me, I said, what are you doing? I said, you can't do that,
it's
you know?
terrible.
So what happened was, guess what? He wound up locking the door in his bedroom and he OD'd and died
Mhm,
in the
mhm,
house.
mhm.
I mean,
It's
people
terrible.
listen, you know what it is why parents do that? And I understand because I'm a parent.
Yep,
Fear
it is
that
fair.
we're not enough. We're a bad parent. How could you
Mhm,
not stand by your kid? How
mhm,
dare you do that? Maybe they'll want help eventually. You have to be there for them. No, I have to be there for them when they want help. Okay. When, if they're in trouble, good. Now I can not force them, but get them to go to treatment.
mhm,
Okay. If they don't want to go to treatment, let them sit in jail.
mhm.
There's another
It's
form of treatment.
Yeah, and it's interesting, and I just to share as I can't say exactly how it is today. I'm pretty sure it's the same, but like in Ontario, Canada, you can't even make a doctor's appointment for your 12-year-old or older. They have to make it themselves. I cannot force them into
Wow.
any treatment
Oh,
of
gee.
any kind. Nope. I'm
So at
so
13 years old, they make those decisions.
Yep, and here's like, I can't, they don't have to bring a report card home. They don't have to do like it's for some reason we have taken the pendulum and swung it so far the other way, it makes absolutely no sense. And so in that situation, if you just like you picture a teenager's rebellious anyways, at that point, the only people who had a problem with what they were doing was mom and dad. School didn't, police didn't.
Wow.
And I don't even know how to describe it because there was nowhere else to go. I became loud, I became obnoxious. I pushed my way up to meet the police chief. I did. I literally pushed my way up to meet the police chief because I'm like, this is wrong. Like you're not even giving parents a chance. And I had incredible officers, and then I had some officers where I was like, oh my God, I'm not going anywhere. You're bringing me a female sergeant because I'm not having this conversation with you because it was seemed as we were, not I would say crazy parents, but it was like, why don't you just do something? I'm like, tell me what to do because there is nothing to fall back on. So part of our story, and I share that very openly, but part of our story is I feel like the whole system is letting parents down right now.
Oh, it's broken. You know what it is? The people that make these rules, either they don't have kids that are messed up or they
Mhm,
don't have kids at all.
mhm,
All right. Now, let me
mhm,
tell you something. If they had children that died from this disease or they
mhm.
had children that caused them all these problems, I guarantee you they wouldn't make these kind of laws. These are
Yeah.
some morons that sit behind a desk that want to seem relevant and they say, well, let the kid make his own decisions. Man, a kid make his own decisions? What are you talking about?
Yeah, my husband was very, very vocal at one point. He's like, "So you want to take a teenage boy who's going through hormones like crazy, who is using all kinds of different things, and he's responsible for making an adult decision that can you just listen to what the rule is?" And we couldn't even people were like, "We'll get him into treatment." I'm like, "We couldn't even put him into there was nothing you could put him into. just not allowed. He has to willingly go. I understand as an adult, like that is obviously when the biggest change happens, is when people decide to make the change themselves. But I'm just giving the example of what do you do when you're dealing with kids from 13 to 16 who literally aren't your kids anymore. They're not, they weren't. At those years, they were not my kids. They were a completely different person. Addiction had
And
taken
you know
over.
what? People don't really talk about a lot, how devastated parents become,
Mhm.
that we feel
Mhm.
broken.
It was
We
horrible.
feel, what did we do wrong? Were we and usually parents fight with each other. You're too hard on him. No,
Mhm.
you're too soft on him. It's your fault. No, it's your fault.
Yeah.
Instead of speaking from one voice, see, they know how to manipulate the situation.
They
Okay.
do. They do. I think whenever trauma happens, I really believe this is a human trait. I have no stats on this, but I believe it's a human trait. Our first instinct is to blame someone. It's just our first instinct. It's like, it's his fault, it's their fault, it's my fault. And how I like to teach it is like blame and ownership sit on the complete opposite ends of the spectrum. So if you are ever in a space where you are sitting in blame, like a victim energy, a blame, anger, resentment, it's like your lowest vibrations you can have. No change will happen from there. Like no change. The only way to change something is to shift from blame to ownership, regardless of what that is. It's not just addiction. It's like any change you want to create in your life, because no one else is coming to do it for us.
Well,
And so shifting,
as long as you stay in the problem, you're not going to have a solution.
So that's where we're
100%.
talking about owning your choices and
Yeah.
being responsible, right?
Yes. Yes. Thank you. That was perfect.
Excellent.
That's my man, Scotty. He's right on the ball.
We
He is,
are
isn't he?
actually right up against the end of the show here, because there's so many good things you guys were talking about. Let me ask you a few questions. Again, I want to remind everybody that, and just giving these a quick look, very important reads. So make sure people check these out. When She Stopped Asking Why, and of course, Owning Your Choices, and your podcast, Own Your Choices, Own Your Life. I think it's just brilliant. Is that on weekly or bi-weekly, or when do you do that?
3 times a week. 3 times a week right now. 2 solos, 1 interview. And we're past probably episode 440. I've lost track. I've recorded a bunch.
Wow.
You know what? Years ago, I wasn't sure if we would be able to find. I felt so called to do this and to share difficult stories. And I thought, am I ever going to find people willing to share vulnerable stories? My answer is yes. Yes, obviously. They're
Well,
there.
I'd like to, I'll get in touch with you. I'd like to have you join we do a roundtable of people around the country that are masters of NLP, that are life coaches, all this stuff.
Yeah.
We get together. Rex Sykes, who is one of the leaders in the NLP world. We do a podcast. We get like 9 of us all together. It's just a roundtable. I'd love to have you take part in that one time.
I would absolutely love that. I'm just finishing my master's in NLP right now, and it has been.
Excellent.
Oh,
I
good.
honestly, the tools that I've learned, I could have so used years ago.
Oh,
But
yeah, right?
Oh, yeah.
See,
Yeah.
NLP, Tim, I also have a master's in NLP.
Yeah.
I'm a hypnotherapist, NLP,
Yep.
EMDR specialist. I do all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
The regular standard stuff you learn in school really doesn't work very well, unfortunately. Some of it does, but really no. These are really hybrid technologies that really do real well. All right, we got to go.
Yeah. Again, I encourage people to learn more about Marsha and Vanwynsberghe. Marsha MarshaVanW.com. Very easy to get to. Everything is there. Where can we see your podcast? Are you on YouTube, or are you on?
I am just making my moves to YouTube, and I am on every other platform.
Excellent. Well, I'll reach out. Maybe I can help you out a little bit with some of that if you need any help. So we always want to support each other and help each other out. I've got, just like you guys, lost my wife 2 years ago to an overdose. And I've got 2 kids that were addicted heavily, went into suicidal after their mother died. But today they're both clean and sober. And everybody's doing great.
It's amazing.
So it's, I get the stories, but without having people like you being willing to go out there and tell their story, and John, who after all these years of being sober doesn't have to spend the time doing this stuff. You guys dedicate yourself to this, and that's why there's hope for other people. So
Absolutely.
both of you guys,
got to do God's work, man.
Thank
And
you.
really,
Honestly,
I'm really proud to know you. I love people like yourself that take the time to really help other people. It's not just about you.
No,
I
actually,
know.
no, it's
I
not.
know.
And I'm so grateful, honestly grateful for our connection. And I just love seeing people doing this kind of work out in the world. Honestly, it just means the world to me.
Excellent. So I want to ask you just to sit tight for a moment while we close out the show, and then we'll talk afterwards to wrap things up.
Okay,
But I
great.
want to
Thank
thank everybody for watching Beat Your Addiction with John Giordano. If you want to know more about John and his life's journeys, go to johnjgiordano.com. It's right there on the
I'll
screen.
get the book.
Get the book.
The kid from the South Bronx who never gave up.
And also his original book, Beat Your Addictions.
Yeah,
or
how to beat your
addictions.
addictions and live a quality life.
But there's also a lot of information about John you want to learn. Me, if you want to know anything about me, the best stuff has been written on post office walls with my picture. So beyond that, I want everybody to remember, if you like this show, share with your friends. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel, and we'll catch you next time right here on Beat Your Addiction.